And also the thing is, I make cushion covers out of it. Cheers to that. Hi and welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah, I'm here with Knitting Natter to help you learn to knit the easy way. Let's talk knitting lessons today. I don't have an overhead camera. I do have a cup of tea. I thought we'd sit and chat today without a lot of stuff to show you. And this maybe one of these reasons is that it's a lot easier to edit if I don't have the overhead as well. But let's just do this, shall we? Let's just do this. Get your knitting out. Sit there and knit and comment when you feel like it. You may find as you knit that things feel easier, knit after knit after knit. That's kind of a given. The stitches feel smoother, you can hold the needles and the yarn more easily, the rows move more quickly perhaps. That's because as you knit, you get more used to knitting and each project feels better than the other. It feels faster than the other and you just learn about knitting. But there are some little nuances about knitting that I feel it's a really good idea to learn, and they may not be so obvious. So the obvious ones I will mention as well, but just note them down. And, you know, we do have these books in the shop that would be really helpful for this. Totally plugging my own merchandise here, but just having things available to say yes, no, so you don't not necessarily make mistakes again, but you don't make the same choices again. I do keep old projects as well that perhaps weren't quite so good or perhaps weren't quite so easy and were maybe frustrating for certain reasons. And then I remember why they were frustrating and I don't do those things again. A lot of my projects that didn't work become cushion covers or placemats, just like I showed you in the video a couple of weeks ago, or was it even last week? Yes, that it doesn't have to be what you think it's going to be. I am someone who will knit so far and then go, this isn't working, I'll make it into something else. So that is definitely something I would suggest. If you make notes, make notes. If you make what you're knitting into something else when it doesn't work, then you will be reminded day after day after day after day. Perhaps not to make those choices again, or to only make those choices again when you are more ready for those choices. As I go through them, you'll get it a bit more. The thing that we've been chatting about recently, actually quite a lot in the last couple of months, is yarn. So if you watch the life-changing magic of the Knitter's life-changing magic of yarn choice, I think that's the one. The thing about this is you can choose a yarn, you can knit with it and love it. You can choose a yarn and knit with it and hate it. You can choose a yarn and knit with it and that's a bit meh. But this is something to note down. I've got the yarn tracker here, and in the knitting review as well, there's a section on yarn and you can talk about which yarns you liked, which is in your stash because you like it, because you don't like it. Just make note of those things and say, I am going to knit with that one again because it's become a favourite. I'm never going to knit that again. It could not just be the specific yarn, it could be the fibre, it could be the thickness, it could be all sorts of things about the yarn that you just say no to. So I've learnt a lot about how I knit with different yarns over the years, and that's become a big thing for me. I make particular choices and the quality yarn has to have specific things about it. Either I won't put it in the shop if I don't think it's good enough, and I won't knit with it myself if it doesn't meet up to the standards that I feel are necessary to find a good quality yarn. I know this is a question that a few of you asked in the survey recently about what is quality yarn. Well, I did go into it a bit more deeply, and I think that was in the life-changing magic as well. So go and have a look at that video when this is finished, and you'll just see a few more things about why I choose specific yarns and why I don't choose other yarns. Those things can really help. What yarns have you knitted with? What yarns did you like, didn't you like, why and how? They can be really useful to note down. And the other thing that you're going to notice over time possibly is your needle choice. I knit with specific needles for specific reasons, for specific problems, for specific... I knit with specific needles for specific reasons, for specific reasons. With specific yarns, for specific reasons, for specific projects. And I make those choices based on my experience of knitting, all of the different projects with lots and lots of different types of needles. That's something that you can know over time as well. And it can be a very personal choice. I mean, very simply as a beginner, I would say steer clear of slippery metal needles. No. Stitches will go everywhere, and you do not want that. You do not want that. So you just won't be able to keep control of them, and that's one thing. But as a knitter with more experience, you can do what you like. You can experiment and try different needles and decide whether you want long, thin, short. Quite simply, one of the things that I know, and I realised, and I've only recently been able to change that, is for a long time I didn't like knitting with really thick needles. I had this headstrong thing that, well, if you're knitting with thick yarn, it's cheating. But also, that was just the excuse. And I didn't want to admit that it was actually painful to knit with thick needles. I found it uncomfortable, and it was just one more thing that was wrong with me. So, as some of you will know, that I do have health conditions, and it's just using muscles that I've not used before, and I don't use very often. So knitting with thick needles all of a sudden can actually be quite annoying for my muscles, and can actually be quite painful. So now I'm more used to it, and I've got that little bit more muscle strength, so I can do it more often, more frequently, and I will be happier to do that. But yes, in the past it was a choice I had to make. That felt like a good choice, and I said no. Now, these other things, yes, I probably make these choices and I make these distinctions because of my health conditions quite a lot of the time. But I also know that they are very helpful to other knitters as well. It's not just me, and it's not just because of my chronic illnesses. It's other things as well. So especially if you are in a similar situation to me health-wise, then really grab hold of these and say, these are my tools, and I'll use them when I'm knitting. But even if you don't have these issues, then just say, oh God, that will make my knitting easier. Be willing to accept these, or some of these as well, into your knitting experience. So it's actually more joyful. You don't get frustrated so much. And I know with a lot of these you don't make so many mistakes. There is that thing too. Right, the next one. I love patterns with a repeating rhythm. Almost like music. I know as I'm going across the row, I have to do slip one, knit one, purl one, knit one, slip one, knit one, purl one, knit one, or knit 3, purl 6, knit 3, purl 6, something like that. And it's a repeating pattern. Sometimes it's 7 stitches and there are, like a knit 1 and a slip 1 and a twist 1, or a knit 2 together or something. And I can just go through that in my head and it feels like a rhythm. And I will sit there on the sofa and I'm doing this counting in my head. Nick's sat next to me. Maybe we've got House of Games on or something, or the X-Files. But it's so automatic to me now that dum, 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 dum. And especially if I've been knitting that particular pattern for maybe a few days or a couple of weeks, and it's just keeping going with that particular rhythm, then I can just do it automatically. I don't even realise that I'm counting. Dum, 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 dum. So that rhythm really helps me knit. And that is me not necessarily having to look at what I'm knitting either, because as I'm more experienced with my knitting, I can knit without looking. This was a challenge of mine when I was a child. I watched Miss Marple. I watched Joan Hickson playing Miss Marple in the 80s because, she was my knitting heroine. And, a couple of characters in the books and even in the TV adaptations would comment on the fact that she was knitting. And I loved that. She would sit there and solve crimes and talk to people and have tea while she was knitting, and she wouldn't need to look at what she was knitting. That felt like a challenge to me. I'm going to be that kind of knitter one day. And I would actually practice. I would sit there and look at something else and knit and say, I'm going to be like Joan Hickson, I'm going to be like Miss Marple, and that would be it. Now, because I've learnt to do that, and I've learnt to do it in many different ways, I can do a rib just like that without even looking at it. And I maybe just check myself maybe once or twice a row, depending on how many stitches there are, and I will check myself definitely at the end of the row, just to check whether it's a knit or a purl stitch first, and then I'm off. I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this to suggest that there are lots of different things that you might find about your knitting that let you do things more easily, and is the repeating pattern going to help you with that as well? So the repeating pattern doesn't just have to be over a single row. I love repeating patterns, and this goes into the next one. I love a repeating pattern which is, say, 6 rows, like, for example, a cable. There we go, here's the mug cozy. So this mug cozy, it's 4 or 6 rows, I can't remember exactly, but once you've done 4 or 6 rows, you repeat those 4 or 6 rows, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. I love that kind of knit because it just shows me that I'm getting somewhere. It's a metaphor for life. Here we go, getting philosophical. But it can happen in other ways as well. It can be that there's 10 centimetres of something to knit, and then we start shaping. There's 6 rows or 10 rows, and then we change colour. Or we do this shaping for one point, and then we change it to another kind of shaping. So there's the rhythm while you're doing one thing, and then you change colour and the rhythm changes or continues, but with a different thing. It's like having, oh look, there's a squirrel. Oh look, there's another squirrel. Instead of saying, oh, I have to knit another pattern so I keep interested, this pattern can keep you interested because of the way it moves. Repeating patterns and just those little shifts every few rows or every little section of knitting can really help the motivation, and it can keep you going as well. I really love that those kind of things can keep you going. And this is what this book actually does, the pattern guides. It encourages you to make the mini goals throughout the pattern so that you can tick them off and see where you're going. I mean, this is a lot more than just the mini goals. You know, it's helping you keep track of exactly what you're knitting as the days and the weeks go by. The mini goals are a big part of how I knit, and I will sit down and say, I'm doing that section. And I will sit down and say, I'm doing another section. And then I'll get up and do something else. Or I'll sit down and I'll do one section, and then I go, oh, that was quick, I'll do another section. That kind of thing can be really, really helpful, because then the mini goals actually show you you're getting somewhere. It's not this single long big blanket that's all the same colour and it's all in garter stitch. If I was doing that kind of thing, then I would celebrate or just say the mini goal is to get halfway through the first ball of yarn. And then the mini goal is to get through that ball of yarn. And then the next mini goal is to get through halfway through the next ball of yarn. But I would also say, please, can we change colour? I wouldn't want to knit a single blanket in a single colour, very likely, because it doesn't fit in with, hang on a second, let's have some mini goals. Let's have some sections that I can reach and then feel proud. Do click the like button if you like this so far. Thank you very much. That's really helpful for the channel. And it lets me know that actually this is the kind of video that you want, because it's a bit more of a conversation, isn't it? There you go. Okay, let's shift completely to a very different thing about knitting. This is something that I know a lot of you will recognise as well, and it's, I knit for 6 months of the year and then I put it down, and then I'm back 6 months later. But the seasons as a knitter can actually guide all sorts of different things, and this is something that you would observe over time. Actually, I had great role models in that respect, because my mum was knitting for craft fairs, you know, for charity in the summer and in the winter, and my grandma would bring her knitting whatever time of year it was when she visited us. So there were lots of different things that showed me that knitting doesn't have to be stuck in the winter. So I do feel fortunate about that. Let's just go over the obvious points. So in the summer you may want to knit small items over large because they are quick to knit, which means that if you are going on holiday you can take them with you. If you are going out for a week's climbing and you think, well, why am I going to take my knitting with me? Then you don't take your knitting with you, and you can finish it the week before you go, and then you can start something else when you get back. The other thing will be that you knit with different fibres. So in the summer it's cotton or bamboo or linen, something like that, because in the summer it just feels uncomfortable to handle wool and acrylics. Knitting in that respect can really be changed by the seasons, the size of what you're knitting, the fibres that you're knitting with, and also the choice of what you want to knit. Rowan actually sent me an email this week as I supply their yarns and said, oh, just to let you know, we're sending you out the colour charts for spring-summer 2022. And I thought, really? It's not even Christmas. But they are starting to launch their spring-summer collection in January. Yes, it will happen over a month or so. People are actually thinking about it by then. Probably they're not going to go, oh, I'm definitely going to start knitting a cotton tank top or something. No, they're going to say, well, I'm looking and I'm browsing and I'm thinking about it. And then they will possibly start knitting it in March. The idea and the seeds are being planted in January and February. And it's almost something that's hopeful, isn't it? Oh, that's all right. Summer's on its way. It doesn't have to be quite so dark, and it won't be so dark for that long. Dark and grey in January here in the Northern Hemisphere. Yeah, it just feels a bit grisly, and is it ever going to end? Yes, it is, because Rowan's brought out its spring-summer collection and you'll be knitting it in a couple of months' time. There is that about it as well, is that we know that the seasons are dictating what we are knitting, and the yarns that we're offered as well. Okay, next point. Do I want to knit for others? And if so, who am I knitting for? I've learnt who is a responsive and appreciative recipient over the years. Some people will go, oh, Hannah, I've been waiting for your new hat. Thank you so much. I love it. And others will go, please knit me some fingerless mitts. I've worn the ones out that you gave me because I've been wearing them so much. And others will be given something and it'll never see the light of day. Very obviously, you can decide who you knit for in that way too. Also, you can recognise how much you knit for yourself and what you knit for yourself. Now, this is the thing that I've learnt over time. I filled my wardrobe up with hand knits many years ago. Being in that phase of life where my weight is fluctuating over and over and over again, in and out and up and down and all sorts of things at the moment, I've decided not really to knit anything in a big way, like not to fill my wardrobe up again, probably for another 5, possibly even 10 years. I'm just going to see what happens. 10 years ago, I filled up my wardrobe when I had been the same weight for years, and I thought, oh, this is easy, I'll do that. And then within a few years, very little of it fitted me still. So it just was a no-no. What I knit for myself now, and I absolutely love. And actually, there's another reason for this as well. Let me just go through the first reason. I love seeing little home items around the house. I absolutely love it. And those little home items, they are mug cozies, they are coasters, they are placemats, they are all over the place. Blankets on the sofa and on the bed, and cushion covers everywhere. So the thing is that my knitting isn't just for me, it's for everyone. You come into this house and you see that I'm a knitter, and you can appreciate the fact that, oh, it's a bit different, and that's obvious because Hannah knits and that's who she is. So I love that I can see the products of my labour around the house. The other point here is that if you knit home items, you can use them all year round. You're knitting a winter cardigan, you wear it in the winter, and very likely you knit it in the winter as well. So that's one thing that you could really be aware of. Do I want to knit something that I can wear year round, that I can use year round, that I will use year round, or do I want it to be something that I use at particular points in the year? Yes, I love getting the baubles out at Christmas. Who wouldn't? And you may want to get summer bunting out that you've knitted, in the summer. So there are little points that you will say, yes, I'll use that all the time, and I will definitely be very happy to use that sometimes. It can really be helpful to just observe over the years what you use, what you don't use, and why that is. If you look at all of the things we've discussed already, there's kind of one thing that can hold them all together, and it can include who you're knitting for. It's not just the particulars about the pattern or the yarn or anything. It can become something that you ask particularly quickly after you finish knitting it, or even while you're knitting it. And it can be, why am I knitting this so quickly? Or conversely, why am I knitting this so slowly? Is there something about it that's stopping you picking it up, or something about it that's making you pick it up? If you can pick out those little things, then they can be really big lessons as you move forward in your knitting journey. And yes, it can be as simple as, well, I'm not picking it up because I don't understand the pattern very well, so it's taking me a long time to knit it. Well, the obvious answer can be, well, learn more about what it is that you need to know so you can knit that pattern, come back and it'll be faster. So it could just be that you need that little bit more experience. It could be that you're knitting something for someone who never appreciates what you're knitting them, so you kind of go, I'm not going to knit this for them anymore, I'm going to knit it for someone else, or I'm going to unravel it and start something completely different. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to say no. Now this is the big one. This is the big one. And this does feel a bit philosophical. Us knitters have to let go of perfectionism. Perfectionism, throw it out the window. Don't let it in. Trash it with the hated yarn. It can be very subtle. And it can be as simple as, I'm unravelling this because the cast on looks ugly. But are you going to see the cast on? Is it going to be part of a seam? Or is it just ugly because you think it's ugly? Is it just ugly because it's very noticeable because you've only knitted 4 rows? When you've knitted 20 rows, it may not be that noticeable. Something else will be drawing people's eyes. And this perfectionism can really grind us down. I kind of got over this when I knitted something for Nick's grandmother 12, 13, 14, maybe even 15 years ago. It was a shawl, and it was a feather and fan shawl, and it was this really thin yarn. I was taking great care of it, and I'd got almost to the end, and I looked at it and I thought, wow, this is amazing, Hannah, you've done a great job. Oh, right near the beginning, like on the second repeat, the repeat had gone out of sync, and my mind went, no. So there was the option to unravel it and start again. If I was a perfectionist at that point, I would have said, I'm going to do that. But what stopped me was, we were giving it to her at a particular point. I said no. I said I could be a perfectionist. I didn't really use that word, I'm sure. But I could say this isn't good enough, or I could say this is good enough, and it certainly was good enough. I had a myriad of praise and love from Nick's grandmother and the family as well. Oh wow, you knitted that, that's amazing, I can't believe it. But it was what she needed. A shawl, because she was sat in hospital, was what she needed, and it was useful. The non-knitters didn't realise I'd made a mistake. I think there was another mistake in it somewhere as well, very similar. But it didn't matter. No, it didn't matter. This doesn't have to be perfect. Knitting is knitting. It's keeping you warm. It's brightening your home. Sending love to a friend or a member of the family. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for love. And when you knit something for yourself, is perfectionism the thing that you want? If you come across something like this yourself, just think about, am I a knitter if I can't blah, 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 fill in the blank? So Am I a knitter if I can't make this lace shawl absolutely perfect? Yes, you are a knitter. And yes, I was a knitter when I made that lace shawl, and it wasn't absolutely perfect. I'm very definitely a knitter. Everybody who saw it and recognised that it was my knitting told me that I was a knitter. That's all we need to know. Sending her a ball of yarn wouldn't have helped her very much, but sending her a shawl that kept her warm while she was sat in hospital did help her. That's what this is all about. The interesting thing about this is that I have now been known to add quirky mistakes to items that I knit, just because. This is kind of my maverick rebel personality, but you're allowed to do that on purpose. Just because you make a mistake doesn't mean that it has to be a mistake. You could actually make a feature out of it. And also the thing is, I make cushion covers out of it. Just like I told you last week. So, let's do this. Let's learn lessons from our knitting and help that inform what we're knitting next and how our knitting goes over the years. And if you'd like these, there are a few packs of them left in the shop, and I mean they're an ideal gift if you want someone to get them for you. Just send them the link. I will leave the link below. You have the knitting yarn tracker, you have the knitting review, the knitting planner, which helps you actually decide what you're going to knit next. You know, you come along and watch some of these videos as well. And the pattern guides, which I talked about, those things that can really help you set those many goals and decide where you want to get to in the different stages as you're knitting. Okay, I hope this has been interesting for you and informative and supportive for your knitting, and I hope you like this bit of a new conversation format. Got my mug of tea still. I tell you, I was talking so much this week. I'm filming on a Saturday morning because the traffic's quieter. I must have been talking on various times on Zooms on Thursday for about 4 hours. And this is something as well. I will just say this. Don't know why it came into my view, but watching YouTube, sometimes the most amazing video appears and I think, that's what I need. And yesterday, as I was sat there with YouTube on, Shania Twain came up. The only thing about being a woman is the prerogative to have a little fun. That's what we need with our knitting as well. Have fun, make some baubles. I'll link the video below so you can knit some baubles, have some fun. Do not worry about getting the ideal, the perfect yarn for those baubles. It's any yarn you've got, whether it's thick, whether it's thin, whether it's anything you want. Just as long as you use the needles that are suggested for the yarn, you'll be fine, really. You just have a different size bauble depending on the yarn that you knit with. And it will appear just the same. It will look the same, it will just be smaller. You see, I've knitted small ones as well as big ones. So have a little fun. Knit some Christmas decorations, knit some placemats because you feel like it rather than yet another cardigan. You know, have a little fun. It's the prerogative to have a little fun. There you go. Cheers to that. Thank you so much for joining me today. Do subscribe if you're not subscribed already. I know YouTube just shows me videos up I'm watching the channel and I realise eventually then I'm not subscribed, so just double check that you are subscribed. This video is the one I've been talking about a few times today, the life-changing magic of knitter's yarn choice, something like that. I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Happy knitting.